And we've, counseled a lot of couples who've come to us and said, man, we just can't get along. We're having arguments. And we're like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Sounds about right, yeah.
That's early marriage. That's newlywed life. Like, it's romanticized, like, oh, we're newlyweds.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it's real out here.
Hello, everybody. It's Friday evening, which means it's time for the weekend exhale with BOL. And it's the second Friday, which means it's time for Point of View, where me and Gianna get a chance to break down and talk about some stuff as it relates to marriage and relationships. So I'm grateful to have my boo and my bae in the house tonight. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Anytime I get to hang out with you, I love it.
Yeah. And we get to work together.
Yeah.
So it works out.
Yes.
It works out. So what are we talking about tonight?
So tonight we're talking about how to know if you found the right one. That's one of the questions we kind of get a lot, like when we're in spaces with younger people, singles, hanging out. People will ask us,
They will.
How did you know he was the one? How did you know she was the one? Because people are kind of trying to have that security to know, they don't want to make a mistake.
Yeah.
They want to be mindful, careful, prayerful, and they're looking for that reassurance on like telltale signs to look for to know this is the right one.
Yeah, I think that we have a generation now that has more information about relationships. But I still think that sometimes there is that question as to how to know and how to have certainty or even how to develop convictions about the way in which you're going. So we want to just dive into that.
Yeah.
And actually there is a portion of this conversation that actually is going to move into the marriage space as well.
True.
Because I think that there's some things that happen on occasion that make people think that maybe I didn't choose the right one.
Absolutely.
And sometimes those intuitions may be correct, but I think a lot of times those intuitions or the metrics may be incorrect in terms of trying to figure out, man, did I make a mistake?
Right.
So I'm assuming you think that I'm the one. How did you know that I was the person that God assigned to you?
Because you told me God is in this. No, I'm just playing.
Okay.
I mean, you did say that.
I did say that, yeah.
But I think I was in a space where I was like praying for the one.
Okay.
You go through these different relationships, it ends. And I had kind of reached that space where I was like, Lord, the next one, I need him to be the one. I don't want to waste any more time. I don't want to spend time, just dating just to date. I want the next one I date to be my husband.
Right.
And so when we first got together, I just remember there was a different peace that I had.
Okay.
I knew you were the one because you were spiritual.
Okay.
We were able to pray together, laugh together, and we were honestly friends before we started dating. Like, we hung out in the same circle. And so it's so funny, when we first got together, even some of our friends in our circle were like, what? Y'all are together? Like, we thought y'all were just like brother and sister, campus brother, sister. Yeah. Because that's how...
We were a campus family at the time. So.
And, that's how we got together, was just, we were just always hanging out. And so I think that friendship obviously kind of laid the foundation. But how I knew you were the one was literally the peace I felt. Yeah. Like, I was really connected with God. I was really connected with what he wanted for me. And I just was in that space where I didn't want to make any more mistakes or choose wrongly. So I just felt a peace that was undergirding our entire dating relationship.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
How did you know I was the one?
But actually, it's something you said earlier that I think is critical. So I think in terms of knowing that you would be my wife, I think I have, really begun to shift from boyfriend space to husband space. So I was thinking along those lines,
Okay.
praying to that end. Because I don't even know that, you can think or recognize when someone is the one when you're in boyfriend or girlfriend space. I think when you're a little bit more settled in your thinking and you have clarity about what it is that you want.
Absolutely.
And I do think that, I know it feels maybe cliche to some, but I do think something that you said I resonate with is, again, I had yielded over the process to God, where, like I wasn't trying to move to the left, to the right, to the north or to the south until I had clarity and conviction about it. So of course, there were just certain things. All right, you're gorgeous, so I was attracted. So like, check, right? We had great friendship. Like we could talk about anything, laugh about anything. Like like some of our early dates before we were quote unquote dating, it would just be I had a car, she didn't have a car, and she would just ride with me to Walmart, and just a trip to Walmart was all that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there was a friendship, but I think that, as I heard the Lord kind of speaking to me or clarifying things to me and moving me, one of the things about it is that it removed a lot of the guesswork. So that I think that, one of the things that happened is when you heard me talking, I was talking, you say, with great conviction and saying, all right, I was about to leave school. You still had a little bit more time. And I think I was able to say, all right, even though I'm leaving, I'm committed to, long term. This is how, we can work it out. This is how I see you fitting into, my life, or we fit into one another's life. So I think I was able to kind of communicate a vision for how our lives would, coincide with one another. So I think part of it is just, when you move into spouse thinking, I think it's key. And I think you have to yield the process over to God.
Yeah, I just want to touch back on what you said and what I kind of alluded to earlier, which was that you told me earlier on, when we were talking and, I was asking your intentions. You told me, God is in this. And I know we laugh about it now, but
somebody's laughing about this right now. They feel like it's a very corny line. It wasn't a line, it was my conviction.
But, that was something that helped me to see that God was in this, that God was leading us together. And it helped me to see that your intentions were, like you said, serious, long term, which was what I had been praying for. Lord, the next one is going to be my husband. So when you're telling me literally before we even started dating, God is in this, I'm like, okay, amen. It just made it easier for me to trust my heart with you as I was in that space where I was like, I don't know, I want to make sure this is the right one. Hearing that was critical too.
Yeah, and so I do think, and honestly, man, I know that for sometimes it can feel frustrating to some. But I think at the end of the day, each and every person has to be able to figure out or be able to discern the voice of God from all the clutter and chaos and noise and opinions and thoughts and shows. You got to be able to sense when that's him giving direction. And so I think that, a big part of knowing he or she is the one, it is a spiritual preparation that has nothing to do with them. Because a person that has no spiritual antenna, I mean, the signs can be, abundantly clear, and everybody can see it, that it is or is not the person, except for you.
Right.
When you have no spiritual antenna or you're not sensitive to the leading of God. So all the signs can say, run the other direction, but you won't be able to see it. Or all the signs will say, man, like, yo, dude, God has given you the full package in him or her. But if you have no spiritual antenna, you will nitpick it, you'll pick it apart, you'll find a reason to sabotage it if there's no spiritual antenna.
Absolutely. I mean, we all had dating relationships, and there were moments where we may have felt, this is the one, this is the person. But like you said, the spiritual antenna was raised at that season. And God was preparing us for that moment. He was preparing us for each other. And he let us experience all that we needed to, so that our ears and our spirit would be in tune to him and ready for each other. So that leads into kind of the next thing is, how do you balance that desire to want to be with someone and find the one with the patience to wait for the right one, because you can't. It's not something you can force and
Sure.
say, "This year I'm finding the one."
Mm-hmm.
Like, there has to be that patience. How do you balance?
Yeah, so I think, it's a bigger question than just how am I patient. So, and what I mean when I say that is there is a text in the book of Proverbs that says the steps of a good man or a good woman are ordered by the Lord.
Yeah.
And so, like, there are times when we believe that God has ordained a certain job. He's ordained us to go to a certain school. He's ordained us to get a certain house. But then when it comes down to romantically, we think it's a probability game or a numbers game, or we ascribe to a certain kind of emotional randomness. It'll just happen when it happens.
Yeah.
But I do think that, like, if my steps are ordered by God, and perhaps probably the biggest decision I'm going to make on earth is who you're going to partner your life with permanently.
Yeah.
I believe that that's assigned. I believe, like, you have been assigned to my life. I believe I have been assigned to your life.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so I think a part of that is, like, it's not so much about finding the right person. I think it's about finding the right path. And my belief is that when you find the right path and you're in those steps that have been ordered by God, I think at the chosen time on the ordained path, your lives will converge or intersect. Now, I do think now this is the hard part, is recognizing that your path is going to look different than everybody else's.
Yeah.
So on somebody else's path, they may meet the one at 20. Somebody else's path, they may meet the one at 24. Somebody else's path, they may meet the person at 27. Somebody else's path, they may meet the person at 38, 40. And so I just think that a big part of that patience is you can't live in your peripheral vision. You can't live a life of comparison. I think you've got to find contentment in the purpose and the calling and the path that you're on with God. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I agree. And you said something earlier about the fact that what we're doing while we're waiting has nothing to do with the other person. We are doing the inner work. We're connecting with God. We're serving. We're finding our purpose. A few years back, I got to photograph a really amazing couple. And it was this older couple who actually, their picture went viral.
Yeah, I remember.
And they found each other, and the caption was, "It's never too late to find love." And for her, this marriage was like 40 years in the making. Like, she had been waiting and waiting for the one. But one of the things I found interesting is, as I interviewed her and asked her, like, how did you wait that long? Like, and she was like, "Oh, I was just doing me. Like, I was just doing what I love to do. I was gardening and baking and serving and doing things in my church. Like, it wasn't about finding a man. It was about doing what God called me to do." And in that space, she was able to, connect with her soulmate for that season. And I think it was such a powerful lesson for so many, because when you wait that long, it can become exhausting. You're wondering, God, are you hearing me? Do you say you give me the desires of my heart, God, but where is he? But being able to be content in whatever state we are, because we are working and moving in our purpose. It makes a difference, and it helps that wait become easy. It's still hard. It's still hard. But I think it makes that wait not be wasted.
And I think it's okay to, the desire for companionship is not evil or wrong. It's not negative. And I think that is something that we can express to God in prayer. But the reason I think it's just really good to make sure that, we do, demonstrate patience during the wait is because when you're not patient, you'll see every potential person. You'll see God in everything. Everybody that comes to your church, or everybody that comes to your class, or whoever that steps on the treadmill next to you, like you're examining. And I think that can be kind of frantic, and that can be kind of exhausting and wearisome. Whereas, all right, I'm moving. I'm prayerful. I'm watchful. Like, I'm clear in what it is I desire. Like, you're not suppressing the desire, but you're just saying, okay, I'm not going to allow it to dictate every move or interpret every situation through the lens of my desire, because I think it can ultimately wind up leading you astray. And I do think patience is critical, because I think one of the keys to being preserved for the right one is, I think you've got to always be willing, especially for somebody who's in a relationship, I think you've got to always be willing to start over. I think you've got to always be willing to walk away.
Yeah.
Not saying you should want to walk away.
Right.
But I just think you have to, when things begin to unravel and God begins to reveal some things, I think, man, one of the keys to cementing your life to the wrong one is when you just kind of make it up in your mind prematurely that, man, whatever, we're going to make this one work.
Right.
Because we've invested a year or 2 or 3 or whatever, maybe we've had a child together.
Yeah.
Honestly, there's just something about that mentality that actually, man, you feel like I can maybe love enough for the both of us or make both of us ready. And I've seen a lot of pain and a hurt result as a result of that kind of thinking.
Yeah. I think it's also important to find wholeness and completeness outside of relationship.
Yeah.
And not putting so much weight on finding a man, finding a girl, you know, to like, okay, then I'll be happy. Then I'll be good. Then I'll be whole. Like, we got to find that and get that now so that we're not making someone else miserable.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody can stand up under the weight of making you happy.
Right. Yeah.
Joy comes from the Lord.
It is.
And it's something that we have to get rooted in and find that completeness now, you know, when we're in that waiting season.
Yeah, so like, you know, there's one of the language in gospel in the songs, we talk about living in the overflow, right?
Yeah.
But the overflow only occurs when your cup is full and my cup is full and 2 full cups come together.
Yes.
That's how you experience overflow. But whenever you have a surplus and a deficit is going to always draw
Suck up everything.
or destroy a surplus because, you know, they have no internal source. So I do think that's a critical component of it.
Yeah. No, I agree. When people are trying to find out, you know, they've started dating someone, or they're, you know, kind of getting interested in someone, how do they know this is the one? Meaning, is it something, because I know as a pastor, you probably get people who come to you and say, Pastor, I want you to meet somebody and tell me, you know, is this the one, or what do you think? Like, is that something you can gather from other people? Is it something that has to come from God? Is it both? Like, what do you think? So,
you know, so I don't think you can get that maybe in one conversation. Now, I do think it's easier. There are certain things, I think, especially when you're old enough and you've kind of seen and you have some sense of how relationships work.
Yeah.
I think you can see relatively early on if it's not the one. And I think that what you can say to a person is, wow, he or she, they're marriage material. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're the one for you.
Right.
Now, I do think one of the things I encourage anybody to do is to look at doing premarital or pre-engagement counseling. Because in that lengthier process, I do think there are a lot of things that are confirmed and they emerge. And there are times where, you know, there are certain couples when I'm standing with them in the altar, you know, I'm able to, I'll say something. Let me step back. Before we even get to the wedding day, somewhere around session 5 or 6, I'll say, hey, man, you know, I really have conviction that, you know, if you two, you know, apply yourself to right habits long term, you can have a very fruitful relationship for a long time. Or I'll look at them and say, you know what? I see a lot of pain in the way you all interact.
Wow.
And I think that pain is going to escalate if you all move forward. Now, everybody does different things with that information. And a lot of times it's observations. Sometimes it's impressions that God is giving. And there are certain weddings where I'm there and I'm as excited as if I was a member of the family. Because I have confidence in how these people move and their ability, their maturity, so on and so forth. And then there are times where I'm kind of like, I'm here because you asked me to be here. And I'm praying for the best. And, you know, there's some that have fought through it and there are times where some things have unfolded kind of in a way that was somewhat foreseeable. So, but at the end of the day, I think you've got to have the conviction for yourself. Like, it doesn't matter if I see it It doesn't matter if your parents see it.
Correct.
And again, you should get godly counsel, right? But it's got to be an internal conviction and assurance based on something that you've heard from God. And so, like, when you hear it from God, it can be confirmed through parents or your pastor or spiritual community.
Absolutely.
But it's got to be your own conviction.
Not gonna lie, Pastor Snell and First Lady Gianna, hashtag one of my favorite couples. Thank you so much for tuning in to POV today. Listen, tune in every first Friday for Playbook, for a different way and the best way to hear about looking into the scripture. But in the meantime, let's get back to POV.
I agree. Like, let's be real. Marriage is hard.
It's hard.
Like, even when you marry the one, even when you're in the right space where you heard God say yes, there are days.
Yeah, there are days.
Where it gets real. And you're like, did I hear what, And you have to be able to not go back and say, my mama told me to marry him.
Right.
Or my girlfriend said this is a good pick.
Yeah.
God, you said that this was my man. God, you said you sent him my way. And there have been days for us where we've had to go back to that moment and say, God, you led us together. God, keep us together,
Yeah, very much.
And so I think that godly confirmation is so critical to seek God. There's this quote that says, pray, 3 times as much when you're dating? Because there's just so many confusing signs, and it's a fragile time, but it's a huge decision that, like you said earlier. So it's a time to be exceedingly prayerful, and get that confirmation from God. And don't feel pressured. Don't feel rushed. Don't feel like, okay, I got to rush down this aisle. I got to hurry up and get married. No, wait on God. Wait for that confirmation. Seek his face, do a fast, ask people to pray for you, that you would make the right decision and that you would see God the way you need to see him, because that thing is going to keep you through some rough stages in your marriage.
And let me just say this, even when we talk about having spiritual conviction or clarity, clarity is not the absence of all doubt or the absence of all questions.
Right.
It's peace even in the midst of unknowns and certain doubts, or some things that maybe you still see where this could be a challenge down the line.
Absolutely.
Because I don't think that there's anybody that gets married and if they do, they're in for a rude awakening if they can't foresee any challenge,
right,
or they can't foresee any adversity, or maybe they've never had any. Honestly, there's this scene in a movie I love called The Matrix, where the one, he fights this guy, and he was like, man, I knew you were the one. And he said, how did you know I was the one? He says, you never know someone until you fight him. And so, because there are things that come out in tension.
Absolutely.
That don't come out in any other way or space. So I do think that you've got to take those times. It's like that old statement says, it's better to measure something 10 times and cut once than to measure once and then you have to cut 10 times. And so it's just a better way to approach it. But I do think, if I could just stress something though, like that point about, man, when you go through, and going through is not just likely, it is inevitable. Right? What your assurance is, it is the equivalent of what a foundation is to a house. So that when you have that clarity, because again, storms are going to come. Like every day will not be ideal weather. At some point, the elements are going to conspire in such a way to bring wind or rain or gusts against that house. But if it's built upon a strong, well-established foundation, it's able to withstand it. So this assurance that we're talking about, it doesn't keep you from storms. It's what keeps you in storms. It makes you not bail prematurely. And it doesn't make you exempt from having to do the work of growing and maturing and reconciling. It just means you have a foundation that can withstand whatever tests that are inevitable to come upon your marriage or your relationship.
Absolutely. And I mean, when we were talking about this earlier, one of the things that we discussed was that sometimes when you get in those hard seasons, especially early in marriage, you may have days where you're like, I don't know if I picked right. This can't be the one. You know what I mean? How do you navigate that as a married person when you go through those hard seasons of life or hard moments where you're questioning whether this is the one,
Yeah.
you know.
So I think that's, so it's crazy. And so this is one of the things whenever I'm kind of doing premarital counseling is like, there's a great book, my man, I'm trying to think of his name. He makes this great quote about marriage, and it speaks to the purpose of it. He says, his name is going to come back to me in a second. The purpose of marriage is not to make you happy, but the purpose of marriage is to make you holy. And if you don't understand the purpose, then the processes won't make sense to you.
Mercy.
So that, like the Bible says, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. But how does iron sharpen iron? It is through the process of friction. That's how iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
And so, like, in the process of, like, kind of bringing holiness out of me, bringing holiness out of you, the way he sharpens that character is through arranging and or permitting friction.
Yeah.
And so I think that sometimes there are a lot of people that maybe you grew up in a house where you didn't see your parents argue, maybe you didn't see them have conflict, or maybe you just grew up in a single parent house and you didn't really know, you didn't have a point of reference at all. But I think the one thing is that, conflict happens to everyone. All right?
Yes.
Or even something like not even understanding why you work. So that most marriages are, that are successful, they don't have two parallel personalities. They have complementing personalities. So, like, really what makes it work is kind of, in many ways, kind of how we are different. I tend to have a more type A, aggressive, kind of intense personality. Gianna's completely laid back. I mean, she is unflappable. She is unbothered by anything. It's a freedom that makes me jealous at times. I'll be honest with you. But, like, that's what makes it work. So someone that had my exact energy, I can respect that. But it probably wouldn't work with me. And so I think that, like, we look at those differences and we demonize them. And the truth is, those things actually are your strengths. They actually help you along the way. And so I think that, if you just see tension as a frustration, as a sign, or just differences as a sign, like, really the only thing, in many ways, the primary things we have in common are our values, not our preferences. We don't always watch the same kind of shows, or eat the same kind of food, or always like to do the exact same types of things. But we had some shared values. Absolutely. And that's what held us together in the midst of those different things. And then I think the other thing that can mess you up is, as a wrong metric for married couples, is when you spend a lot of time comparing. And I think that's a very dangerous thing. Because the truth is, even your good friends, you never know what's happening behind closed doors. No matter how, as you talk about at times, how great their Instagram pictures are from their vacation, no matter how good of a time they seem to have when they're out in public, or when you see a couple in church. The truth is, that's no knowledge at all. That's just people having decorum and knowing how to act and how to behave. I don't think anybody gets to sidestep the processes that come with growth and maturity. And then I think the other mistake a lot of couples make is, we assume that because this is where we are in year 2 or 3 or 5, and because its take and growth is so slow, the assumption is it's going to always be that way. And I think it's always a dangerous thing to forecast the weather 10 years from now based on the outlook today. Like, growth is slow. And I think, I think the mistake we would make sometimes is, like, in my mind, was like, man, no, this is actually more in your mind. Which said, like, man, we should be further along by now. Or it shouldn't be taking this long for this to grow. And a lot of times that's just an imaginary thing. Like, that's actually how long growth and maturity takes individually, and it's going to be even slower as a couple.
I mean, we live in a microwave society. We want it now. We want it quick. I remember when we first got married, just growing up, I was around a lot of older couples. My dad was a pastor, and so we were always around other couples that I looked up to, strong marriages. And one of the things, even with my grandparents, you know, I would see how they interacted with each other, you know, after 40, 50 years of marriage. And you would see, you know, them making decisions or doing things. And she would say, you know, I want to do this. And he would say, oh, whatever mama wants, you know, I'm just here for her. Happy wife, happy life. And they just seem to have such an agreeable marriage and such a smooth transition for making decisions. Like, I wanted that like day one.
Day one,
So when we would have these tensions starting out, I would be like, where's the whatever she wants, or whatever type of bread she wants, whatever she want to go. I was thinking we were going to have that immediately, like this oneness. But like you said, that friction, that iron sharpening iron, the process of becoming one, it takes years. And sometimes in our microwave society, we're just like, I want it now. I want to be in this space where we just working with cohesiveness. And if people could see, like you said, those early years of the struggle, and we've you know, counseled a lot of couples who've come to us and said, man, we just can't get along. We're having arguments. And we're like, that sounds about right.
Sounds about right,
That's early marriage. That's newlywed life. Like, it's romanticized, like, oh, we're newlyweds.
Right,
it's real out here. And so we've had to let people know, and that's why I'm glad that this show exists, this platform, so we can bring a light to the fact that marriage is work. Marriage takes intentionality. It doesn't just happen. We have to grow into it. We got to fight for it. We got to pray for it. There's been many times where I've walked circles around our home praying. There's been many times where you've come and put your hand on me and prayed the words I couldn't pray. People have encouraged us and prayed over us. And I believe that that's why we're still together, why God has kept us strong.
20 years, boo. 20 years. And counting by the grace of God.
And so it takes work, and I think we need to have more of these real conversations, because people see the Instagram, they see the Facebook, they see the vacations, all the pretty pictures, the roses he bought you, but they need to know that there's work behind that. There's prayers, there's some tense conversations, there's some sleepless nights, but God, you know?
And I think, man, the one thing, you know, when we celebrated 20 years, I think, you know, and that's why you have to really, and that's why I'm never an advocate. And it's funny because people, they get really frustrated with me at times, because I have a kind of a strong no divorce stance. Now again, if you're suffering abuse, physical, emotional, I'm not advocating that. But what I am saying though, is if we had assessed based on 3 years, 5 years, what the rest of our marriage would look like, we probably would have come to the wrong conclusion. If even at 10 years, like we had said, okay, this is what it's going to be, we actually would have made the wrong decision. If you pull the ripcord too quickly, or you jump out of the boat. A lot of times, you know, it's based upon an assessment that's not fully matured. And see, this is a challenge, because sometimes what people will only tell me as a pastor, especially when they're going into maybe their second or third marriage, and maybe they're going through a counseling process, or they're really matured, well, they will, you know, I won't say what they'll only tell me. They'll say, but now when they matured, they settled spiritually, they'll kind of say, well, you know what, man, if I had known this, or if I had been thinking this way, or if I had been kind of processing, I probably could have made the first marriage work. And so I think there are times where we focus so much on, is he the right person? Is she the right person? And I think the question may be, do we have the right practices? Do we have the right habits? Are the things that we do sustainable? Because there are certain things that are not sustainable. And you could be married to someone that has the patience of Job, but if your habits are not sustainable, like, you know, I think the relationship is sabotaged in some ways, I guess.
Absolutely. I remember one time we were going through kind of a tense season in our marriage, and we ended up on the therapist couch, and we do recommend getting that, you know, assistance where needed to work through things. But we were on the couch, and we were just going through, he said this, she did this, and we were just going back and forth. And then they just looked at us and said, when was the last time y'all went on a date? And we were like,
It was actually that simple.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And we were like, but you didn't hear what I said,
Yep.
that he did, that she did.
Yep.
They were like, when was the last time you've been on a date? And we were like, well, the kids are young. We're just in this season where we're ripping and running. They were like, y'all just need to spend time together.
Yep.
And we were just, like, I was actually offended. Like, no, we need to work through this. And she was like, at the root of it. They were saying at the root of it, you guys got to have fun.
Yeah.
You got to enjoy each other.
Yeah.
You got to take that time to do the things that you did when you first got married. And so sometimes this is easy when you talk about practices and doing those things, like going out on dates, enjoying one another.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just need to laugh. This thing gets heavy.
Yeah.
Life, stress, all those things. And sometimes we just need to laugh, to go for a walk. And they kept telling us, you don't have to do anything hard. You don't have to go to Mexico. You can just go to McDonald's and get some ice cream and, just, do your thing.
Very much.
Just keep it simple. And we started implementing it that night. Like we went and ate dinner and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
I feel so much
And it's
better.
funny because like just amending some practices, we didn't have to be in couples therapy indefinitely,
Right,
in
right,
perpetuity, but there were just some things that we needed to be able to make a note of and make some adjustments of.
Yeah.
Quick question. How would you advise somebody in terms of knowing the difference between love and infatuation?
That's a good question. I think infatuation is often based on surface. It's based on looks and, like this fairy tale of what our lives are going to be like. Love is like battle tested. Like it's like I'm choosing to love you. Like no matter what I see, no matter what we go through, we're making a choice to love each other. Infatuation can fade. Like if something happens, if I go gray, if I get a little more curvy, whatever, like that infatuation can fade. But when we are in love and when we've chosen each other and we're continuing to choose each other, I feel like love goes deeper than infatuation.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I think and the truth is everybody gets infatuated. I don't think that's,
that's how it starts.
That's not just the unspiritual or those who are immature. Everybody's infatuated. But I just think, I think what's the one thing I would say that infatuation, the only thing that defeats it is time. So I think, it's going to run its course. And so that's why I think you got to be careful about not making permanent decisions when you're still in an infatuation stage. So I think that there's going to come a time where time is going to clarify certain things. And then I think, infatuation is generally uninformed, whereas love is informed. Where infatuation, man, is just so blind and sometimes lustful and just sometimes urgent that it doesn't gather all the needed information. Whereas, like, actually, when you're kind of operating in love, it's not like I'm blind to certain traits.
Right.
I see them.
Yeah.
I know what it is, but I'm kind of making a decision to assume that because I want everything that comes with this package.
Absolutely. No, it's something that we have to be mindful of. As we prepare to close, do you want to just pour into a single person who is praying and waiting for the right one, maybe facing some discouragement with some disappointments? Because sometimes we think, this looks good on paper, like check, check, check. And then you get a little deeper, you look under the hood, you do that, what is it, Carfax report.
Carfax, you gotta have a Carfax.
And it's like, so like, how can you encourage, what do you think that single person needs to hear?
So I just think one of the things you gotta realize is that there are certain people that are sent to be a blessing, and then there's some that are a lesson. And so even if it didn't go well, if there is a lesson to be gleaned from it, I think that can kind of help you navigate some things going forward. In fact, sometimes there are certain people, everybody's path is different, but sometimes you'll never really know what you want until you kind of find out and it becomes clear what you don't want. So, you have those people that were a blessing, but then you have some that are lessons. The other thing I would probably say is this, is to make sure you date not with paranoia, but with caution. Meaning, like, I don't think you have to make decisions on the first date or after a month or two. I think you have to just kind of let some things play
Play
out.
out. Yeah.
And then number three, I would probably just say to somebody who is kind of, patiently waiting on the Lord. Only thing I'll say is this, and it's hard perhaps to hear it on this season of life, but I need you to know that if you wait on the Lord, and even in your mind, you had a scripted kind of plan for your life that says I'm going to be married by the time I'm 32 and we'll have kids by the time I'm 35. You have to kind of throw that stuff away. The Bible says, in a man's heart, he plans his course, but it is the Lord that determines his or her steps. And so I just think that, as you abide in purpose, God has a path, and everything in your life that is going to bring you joy, fulfillment, happiness is on that path. You just got to be loyal to that path. Don't take shortcuts.
Yeah.
Like, don't divert from the path for the sake of a person.
Yeah.
Because all you really do, man, is multiply pains and sorrows by diverting from the path. And so I would just encourage somebody to stay on that path, wait on the Lord. And once things are fulfilled in his own time, it will bring a joy and a completion and a satisfaction that will ultimately make you say, you know what, man, I didn't want to have to wait this long, but man, it was worth the wait.
Absolutely.
And man, I ain't going to lie. I mean, maybe I'm just trying to save myself or some other pastor some headaches by saying this. It would just be better to wait the aggregate amount of time than to marry the wrong person. I like that decision of marrying the wrong person. It is a decision that actually almost never stops hurting on this side of heaven.
Mercy.
Like, from what it does to children, self-esteem, financially. It's just, I don't want you to be paranoid. I don't want you to be anxious. But like, it would just be better to remain single and to just wait as long as the Lord ordains than to marry the wrong person. It is a decision that just never, ever stops hurting. It changes you into someone that you never imagined becoming. So just be patient and be still.
Yeah. He makes all things beautiful in his time.
That's right. Yeah.
And I just want to encourage a married couple or a married person who may feel like, this ain't looking like the right one. You're in a tough season. It's looking like you want to run back out the door. You coming home and you want to turn around and go back. I want you to know that weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Let God work. Make room for God to do something different. It doesn't always start out pretty. We have to go through that process. We all do have to go through that process of becoming one. And it hurts and it's painful. And there are things that are going to be peeled back and pushed out and brought to the surface about you and about your partner. But I want you to hold on, stand on the word that God can do the impossible. And I want you to continue to hold on to your faith and to each other. God is able to make something beautiful out of even some of our most painful moments.
All right. So listen, that's it for tonight. We thank you all so much for joining us for the Friday Night Exhale. This is Point of View, hoping that this helped you, that it blessed you, that it encouraged you in some way. If it did, go ahead and share it with somebody. Share it with one of your single friends, one of your married friends, that they might be helped, that they might be encouraged, that they might be strengthened as well. And then we ask for your prayers with us here at Breath of Life, that the Lord will give us things that we hope will be a blessing to you and to the world. And after we leave, we're going to talk about some ways that you can give and support the ministry, because when you give, it allows us to fill up the internet stream and the airwaves with things that grow the kingdom of God and make Jesus Christ known. God bless you. Pray that you have, man, a very peaceful, restful weekend. And when you get a moment, take some time and exhale.
Thank you for tuning in to POV. The Exhale with BOL is here every Friday night at 8 p.m. Central. And listen, click on the notification button. Hit like and subscribe so you won't miss a single episode. We are here talking about relevant topics and practical advice just for you. This mission that we have here at Breath of Life cannot happen without you. So to learn how you can be a part of our mission, to donate, just look in the descriptions for more information. In the meantime, to catch up on more episodes, to watch episodes that you have never seen before, or to maybe rewatch some episodes, go ahead and click on our playlist over here to see more. In the meantime, we will see you next time.